Everyone knows I love Dragon Ball. And you may or may not know this, but I also love Bruce Lee movies. I grew up watching Bruce Lee thanks to my older brother introducing him way back when I was a kid. But guess what? Dragon Ball and Bruce Lee are linked quite a bit. And on today's video, we're going to share all of the principles that Dragon Ball has been inspired by the legend of Bruce Lee. There are approximately 8 billion humans in the world that could be playing Raid Shadow Legends, so you might as well start right now. Learn the basics of Raid and you'll be smashing bosses in no time. Focus on getting your champions to level 60. This can help you level up other champions and get through the campaign and dungeons. You can join a clan, you can upgrade your artifacts, you can use skill tomes to upgrade their powers, you can do progress missions, and so much within just one game. And now, starting in February, there's a special Raid Love Quest. All you have to do is download Raid Shadow Legends from links below, copy your in-game player ID, and then head to raidlovequest.plarium.com. From Valentine's Day, February 14th to March 14th, you can play one of the Valentine-themed mini-games for a chance to win some fantastic in-game and real-life prizes, including Valentine's Day-themed Raid Champions and even an Amazon gift card worth up to $1,000. And even existing players can get a promo code from raidlovequest.plarium.com for special Valentine's gifts. But there's more. New players can use my link or scan the QR code right here and get a free starter pack with this cool in-game loot. There's no reason not to try Raid Shadow Legends today. In the past, I've talked about how Ultra Instinct was directly inspired by Bruce Lee, but there's a lot more to this. Toriyama himself has stated multiple times that he grew up a massive fan of Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, and there's tons of stuff from their respective movies that's popped up in Dragon Ball. But how much Bruce Lee is in Dragon Ball? That's the topic today we're going to be discussing on Dragon Ball X Sayuki, and joining me is a fellow Bruce Lee fan. Guy's been watching his movies since we were kids, and he has too. Please welcome back Jordan. Of course, you're always on these. That's your job, brother, to be on here with me.
Yeah, and I enjoy it, man. Let's get into it.
Let's talk about Bruce Lee. So, in the Dragon Ball anime, there's actually a Bruce Lee imposter that shows up in some filler scenes that Goku beats up. But in the manga, even before Dragon Ball, Dragon Boy, or even the concept of a dragon being in the title, is from Bruce Lee. He's done tons of movies, but of course the biggest was Enter the Dragon, which Toriyama was a big fan of.
Right, that's right. And people really underestimate the amount of knowledge that Toriyama has and the amount of research he did to prepare for Dragon Ball. So the whole story behind Toriyama coming up with Dragon Ball was that he decided that it was going to be a kung fu themed story. His wife was a huge fan of Chinese culture, and so he traveled to China and to India to learn about martial arts and Journey to the West specifically. And the things that he learned, he implements into the series way more than people give him credit for. As a matter of fact, the entire moral compass of the series is essentially
It's basically Enter the Dragon mixed with Journey to the West. Because in Enter the Dragon, the entire plot is basically Bruce Lee just solving the problems of society with Taoist martial arts. Combine that with Journey to the West, and you've got Dragon Ball. So the first thing I want to explain is just how connected Sun Wukong and Bruce Lee are. So the story of Journey to the West is essentially mostly in itself also symbolism. Sun Wukong is a representation of what is known as the monkey mind in Buddhism, and the monkey mind in Buddhism is also what's known as the ego in martial arts. So the original Ultra Instinct that Goku used with the silver hair variation, his heart and his mind is calm, and in order for him to use Ultra Instinct, he essentially has to imprint his fighting style into his muscle memory, so that when his heart and his mind is calm, his body will automatically react, and it's basically the ultimate defensive technique. Well, Bruce Lee criticized this because of the fact that it is the ultimate defensive technique. He thought that despite this Chinese philosophy, despite how mystic and revered it is amongst martial artists, he felt that there was a problem with it, and that was that in a survival situation, you could not put out the power that you need to survive. Now, this was the exact same problem that Tripitaka had on the Journey to the West. Essentially, he could not implement his ego to protect himself, and Sun Wukong is a representation of that ego. So when Sun Wukong becomes the victorious fighting Buddha at the end of Journey to the West, that is essentially what Bruce Lee was trying to master within martial arts. He was trying to take his ego, which is a basic survival instinct. It's essentially what happens whenever your body is thrown into a state of fight or flight. Your ego has a lot of functions, but when your body is sent into a state of fight or flight, your ego is essentially what causes your body to react in combat. It's essentially what causes you to react as though your life is in danger. And that is essentially what ends up being Sun Wukong's personal enlightenment at the end of Journey to the West. And that is also the end goal of Bruce Lee's martial arts. The end goal of his martial arts is to be able to successfully let your ego act on its own, so that way it acts offensively in a superior way to where you can utterly destroy your opponent, which makes it the ultimate offensive martial arts technique. So True Ultra Instinct is a literal play on Bruce Lee's personal martial arts philosophy, and Bruce Lee's personal martial arts philosophy is a reflection of Journey to the West due to the fact that Bruce Lee's personal martial arts philosophy and Journey to the West are both directly influenced by the Tao Te Ching, or Daoism, and Buddhism, because martial arts as a whole is completely influenced by Buddhism and Daoism. So the fact that Bruce Lee's personal martial arts philosophy is literally the exact same thing metaphorically as the entire story of Journey to the West, essentially implementing your ego or your monkey mind to protect you in battle, eventually master purifying it in the same way that Sun Wukong was purified and became a Buddha. It's amazing. The fact that Toriyama made that connection and implemented both of the characters into Goku through how deeply connected they are is ridiculously good writing on Toriyama's part.
Bruce Lee has a book called The Tao of Kung Fu. And if there are 3 books that I would suggest any Dragon Ball fan read in order to better understand Dragon Ball, it would be the Tao Te Ching, which is essentially the book that explains Daoism. It would be the Tao of Kung Fu, which is essentially Bruce Lee explaining how Daoism affected his martial arts style, and Journey to the West, because the Monkey King himself is a reference to the Tao. So all 3 of these things are very, very heavily connected. And the reason for that is they all share the same philosophy. Alan Watts, it was a big influence on Bruce Lee, and the way he described it was, it's a state of wholeness in which the mind functions freely and easily without the sensation of second mind or ego standing over it with a club. And what he means by that is to let the mind think what it wants without interference by the second self or the ego within oneself. So as long as the body thinks what it wants, there is no struggle between you and your ego in terms of action. And that is the inspiration for Ultra Instinct, is you are essentially letting your body do what it wants, and as a result, you're taking advantage of your ego, but you're not approaching situations with malicious intentions. Sun Wukong is a actual literal representation of this idea. When he first starts the journey to the West, he consciously kills everyone in his way. He is a murderous, very vicious. Like, in his mind, it's logical for him to wipe out anybody who's in his way. So Buddha taming Sun Wukong is a metaphor for the very concept that Bruce Lee is talking about in his book. So when Bruce Lee talks about how you're supposed to tame the ego and let it do what it wants, what he's basically trying to say is that you should let the ego act on its own without malicious intentions. And that is essentially the end goal of Sun Wukong's character development in Journey to the West. He is still implemented as a weapon and used to protect the main character in the story of Journey to the West, but he learns to do it with pure intentions as the victorious fighting Buddha by allowing his body to react on its own without the interference of the ego. So Bruce Lee and Sun Wukong are very, very connected in that way. And they are playing on
And now so is Goku.
Yeah, and they're playing on that right now with Goku. So if you'll notice, whenever Goku uses the silver-haired variant of Ultra Instinct, he specifies that he is fighting as an Earthling. And that is because the angels and Goku's Ultra Instinct are a representation of this Chinese philosophy of martial arts that Bruce Lee himself criticized. That's why you'll notice that Goku is very calm, and he's not capable of taking advantage of what happens whenever his heart starts beating in the heat of battle, because his heart and his mind is calm. So he is a literal representation of the criticism that Bruce Lee had for Chinese martial arts in that moment. And then True Ultra Instinct is a literal, if you're trying to understand exactly what I'm trying to say about Sun Wukong's character development, just look at how Goku handled True Ultra Instinct. Whenever he puts his hands together and he breathes and he takes a second, and you'll notice they really highlight Goku meditating before going to fight Granola. And that's because what he's doing there is he's taking what he learned on Earth as a martial artist and he's using it to keep his mind calm and control the effect that happens to him in battle when his heart starts going crazy. So this latest variation of Ultra Instinct is not only a representation of what made Sun Wukong special as a character, but also the very philosophy that Bruce Lee himself taught in martial arts.
Right. And it's funny because there's tons of references even before Ultra Instinct. I mean, one of my favorite Toriyama statements was that when Goku became a Super Saiyan on Namek and he gave Frieza the glare, that was right from Bruce Lee. Like whenever you see a kung fu film where the camera zooms in on the main character or on a character, it's usually to display that this person's angry or ready to fight.
That's
and
right.
Toriyama himself said his eyes from right after he transforms for the first time and looks up at Frieza, I base those off of Bruce Lee since that look is of his where he glares right at you is paralyzing.
Right.
So a beautiful, beautiful stuff in there. It's all over the manga. I mean, we could, if we sat here and we looked at the entire original manga, not even Super, we could do 4 or 5 hours just examining all the
Super
little
Saiyan
things.
is a great example because, and that's why Goku having mercy on Frieza is actually so important, and a lot of people don't realize what he's actually doing there, but he is actually living the very philosophy that Bruce Lee himself taught in terms of martial arts. He is using his anger, he is using his righteous anger, his instincts as a Saiyan to his advantage to do maximum damage while also controlling himself and practicing the principles of Budo or martial arts by breaking Frieza's ego and encouraging him to practice martial arts and get stronger. What people don't understand is that Goku is he is the very embodiment of the idea of Budo. Whenever Grandpa Gohan took Goku aside and taught him the principles of Budo, whenever he sat him down and was like, I know you're a wild beast, but I'm going to try and teach you the ways of martial arts, and I want you to try and use these ways to tame your own nature. That is what Goku is trying to do every time he runs into a villain like Frieza, Cell, Moro, Vegeta, any of these characters. That's actually his goal, because what he is doing is he is using the same method that he himself used to tame his wild beast-like nature, and he is trying to extend that to people around them so they can also use that to tame their nature. And we're actually seeing that unfold firsthand right now with Black Frieza. The entire idea, Frieza is just as evil as he's ever been. But because he has learned...
But he's becoming more like Goku. He's now learning. Because when on Namek, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but on Namek, Frieza was still from a perspective of not only ego, but also fear. Like, Frieza could not fathom that the Super Saiyan legend was real, and he couldn't fathom that a Saiyan outclassed him in battle. By the time we get to Black Frieza, as a character, he's not only learned he can overcome them, because true Golden Frieza and regular Golden Frieza was in a way stronger than Super Saiyan Blue, but his body was not ready for it. So Frieza knew, okay, this guy outclassed me, but if I do focus, I can outclass him. So Frieza was kind of becoming more of a martial artist, even though he's still evil.
That's right. So Goku, that's the reason that Goku doesn't really mind if the character isn't necessarily going to become good right away, because what made Goku good, besides having his head damaged, besides having his memory erased, was constantly practicing the principles of martial arts. So what happens is he breaks the ego of these characters, which causes them to start practicing martial arts, which causes them to do things that they wouldn't normally do to improve themselves, which automatically starts, due to the fact that they feel the need to constantly feed their ego and prove themselves, it causes them to do things that they normally wouldn't do that are good. And Frieza is a perfect example of this. Frieza would normally never save Goku and Vegeta, but because he has the drive of a martial artist, he is willing to put up with them in order to improve himself. And that is essentially what I like to call the Goku effect. Goku represents this effect that Grandpa Gohan had on him, and he extends that effect to everyone around him. And we've seen that happen throughout the series. It's happened with Krillin, Yamcha, Tien, Piccolo, Vegeta, the list goes on. And that's why Goku is such a special character, and the way he's written is much more unique than a lot of stereotypical heroes.
With that being said, we'll bring this video to an end. Check out Jordan. Talk to you in the next one.